This is a video review of the Transformers 4 Age of Extinction Voyager class Grimlock figure, and this figure is totes amazeballs. You can quote me on that. Totes amazeballs. And that's not to say he doesn't have his fair share of problems. He actually does have a fair number of problems, and some of them are actually kind of severe. But I feel like his overall quality as a competent figure, which he is, and then his immense amount of gravitas, really make up for any of the flaws that he does have. Now, I'll talk about his being a competent figure and his flaws in a little bit. I want to talk about his gravitas right now. I'm going to zoom out so you can see this awesome pose. And this awesome pose is, he's just standing there. Now granted, it's my trademark dynamic standing, but it's just standing there. And it makes it look like a world-shattering event. And that's really cool because no matter what his pose is, you get that out of this guy because he just has so much gravitas. Like, you could dress him up as Mrs. Nesbit and have him participate in Wussy Tea Time, and he would look badass. It would look like what he was doing. He is dressing up as Mrs. Nesbit, and Wussy drinking tea would look badass, and would look like it mattered that Grimlock was doing it, because it's Grimlock, and it looks awesome. And to really demonstrate what I mean, I'm going to compare him to the ConstructBots Grimlock here, who will be in basically the same pose, and I want you to just look at them for a moment and see which one just looks better overall and kind of figure out why. If you haven't figured out the answer yet about why this one just looks like a toy standing on a shelf and this looks like a badass standing on, well, on wood, the answer is posture. This one has awesome posture. This one just has generic, very static, very stiff robot posture that most Transformers have. This Grimlock figure, the Voyager class Grimlock figure, has some of the best posture I've ever seen. Like, I complimented High Octane Bumblebee for having some really good posture, and he does have it, but this figure takes us to a whole nother level. And it's really amazing because I've not seen figures really take to posture quite as well as this guy has since, around Transformers Animated in 2007-2008. And Transformers Animated was, because of the art style, basically had to have good posture. Or else the figures just wouldn't work. They could have made this guy with terrible posture or just very static posture, and he still would have been a great figure. But no, he has excellent posture, and he's wonderful because of it. I don't want to spend too much time on that, but just keep that in mind while you're watching this, because he does have some flaws, but just remember this gravitas. I really think it makes up for it. Now, the robot mode itself is actually quite neat. It's got lots of lovely detail. I love the color scheme, like this bronzy gold color with the silver highlights. It's a very natural-ish color scheme, but it would look kind of, grating a little bit after a while, but what pulls it together and makes it not look grating on the eyes after a while is the green in the Tyrannosaurus Rex eye sockets and then his green eyes. Just that small amount of green pulls it together and makes it look awesome, and I actually would prefer a little bit more green on him because of how well it works, but I don't know where I would actually put it, so this is basically the perfect color scheme for this figure. Now, looking on the back, you can see I have a slightly different backpack transformation than most people do, or than the instructions say. I'll be talking about that in a little bit, but overall, that's the figure. Let's, should I talk about the weapon or the pose? Let's talk about the weapon. The weapon here, a lot of people have been giving it flack because you can't hold it, this mace from back here, so you can't, smack someone with it. He can just hold it like a scepter, and I get that, but he does not have a forward wrist swing like this, so he can't do this to actually follow through this swings. So even if he could hold it from back here, it wouldn't actually do what I want it to do for a weapon like this, so I'm fine with it that I can only hold it like this. And if you want a sword, you can take the actual head of the mace off, or keep it on if you want, but have him hold it upside down like this, and he gets kind of a sword like that. So the weapon doesn't necessarily do what you might want it to do, but it does enough. I have more of a problem with his wrist not being able to bend forward to actually use the weapon than the actual weapon itself. Now, to the articulation, the first thing I want to talk about are the wrists, actually. He does have a wrist swivel here, but to do it, you need to take this and all of this dinosaur kibble with him. Now, normally what's supposed to happen is that this tab is supposed to go into that hole right there, and that blocks him into having just normal curling iron arms, and I don't actually mind this as much as I thought I would, because I know I have the option to turn his wrist. So I actually find that I end up leaving his arms like this more often than I thought I would. So it's kind of interesting. Basically, as long as you have the option to turn the wrist, it's not bad. Although I do admit, not having the this kibble plugged into the arm does make it stick out a little bit too far for my taste. Moving up the arm, you do get an elbow that goes 90 degrees. You do get a bicep swivel, which is a little bit too tight for my taste. Then you do get a forward and back on the shoulder and an out on the shoulder. And yes, these things do get very annoying. And next, I want to talk about the head. I was talking about how good his posture was, and part of that is just how his head is jointed. Because it's connected very deep in the chest, and it moves back and forth on that joint. And that means that when you're moving the head, to move it, you're actually kind of bending his spine a little bit, or what would be his spine if he had one. And that's how you can adjust his posture so much, which gives him good body language, because body language is something that this guy does really well. And I wish more figures would have necks jointed that deeply in the body, because that really helps this figure a lot. That's all I'd say. His head articulation is perfect. He goes forward and back, but the head turning motion is after that. So you can't have him like lean forward to change his posture, look to the side, and then look up. The only way you can make him look up is by doing that. And that's not quite a looking up pose from there that I might like. I wish he had another neck joint in there. That would just make his neck joint perfect. And speaking of things that are imperfect about his neck joint, the back of his helmet bumps into a lot of crap back here. Part of that exacerbated by my back transformation, which I'll talk about in a little bit. If they had made his helmet, which you're never going to see back there, or not usually, just flat, straight down, then he would actually be able to look up quite a ways more than he can. So, that's one thing I wish were a little bit different about the neck. His neck is great, it's just, it could have been so much better. Now, moving on to the legs is where you get to the real problems of this figure, because he has this battle skirt. This right here, and then these over here, and stuff just bangs into each other all the time. I wish that they had made this a lot more narrow and had it plug in. That way we wouldn't need to move forward with the rest of the leg. It would just be kind of there. But as it stands, you might need to move this out of the way sometimes, and these things here will just always dislodge and bang into stuff just all the time. Now, for articulation itself, barring these things blocking it, you get universal joint at the hip, so forward and back and in and out. Rotate above the knee, bend 90 degrees at the knee. The foot can go forward, I can go back like that, but not forward very much. It kind of snaps into place. And one thing that sucks about this foot is that it does not have a flat instep. So you can't just plop him down and have him, well, he did it this time, but you can't just plop him down and have him stand. He won't rock a lot or even fall over. Which is why it's nice that he has an ankle tilt, but the ankle tilt is absurdly high. If it were down here, it wouldn't be quite as bad, but this looks like he broke his shin. Now, this is a very useful joint. He needs it to stand because it doesn't have a flat instep, which, by the way, is something I wish Hasbro would just learn to always do. If your figure has moving legs, it has a flat instep. That makes sure it can always stand. He needs this joint to stand, so as weird as it looks, you will end up using it a lot. So I could see that being a deal breaker for some people. Because he's actually a robot, I don't mind it being a little bit weird and inhuman. It's kind of weird, but I can deal with it. And that's about all for his articulation now. Except that if you did have this down, and I'll move it down, it would bump into his legs a lot, so he wouldn't have as good backwards leg articulation. Now this, actually I'll just stick with it like this for now. The backpack transformation I normally do is not this. This is what the instructions tell you to do, but it's awful because, for one, it blocks his legs here. For two, it means there's no good way to grasp him because there's this flopping around and this flopping around, so it's hard to just grab him without feeling like you're stressing plastic. Like, this will flex a lot, and then this just does not. This is not a good way to grip the figure on this, so it makes it hard to just hold him without feeling kind of gross. And it's just kind of ugly back here too. So what I prefer to do is put this up and then move this around. And to move that around, there are these two prongs right here that will bump into the hip joints here. To make it as easy as possible, rotate the legs forward a little bit. There's a flat edge to the kind of circle of the universal joint where it's easier to move it past. That's what I usually do to move it past. And I like this backpack transformation quite a bit more because it's more clean, even though you still have this jaw right here. And it means that it's more solid when you hold him. It gives me a good way to hold him, which is really nice. Every figure needs a good solid way to hold the figure. And the only bad part is that it kind of ruins the silhouette around his head by putting this bit behind his head. It's not the end of the world. I actually don't mind it. I could, it basically is not accurate to the concept art we've seen. But if this were intended to be back here, I could accept it. So it's not a big deal to me. This is my preferred backpack transformation. And yeah, that's about it for robot mode. Let's get to the transformation. Now, the transformation is kind of simple. And that's actually one of the things I like about this guy, because the transformation is not something that just takes forever to do. It's simple, but very effective. So to do this, we're going to bring the dinosaur lower jaw back like this. Then we're going to take the dinosaur bits right here over his shoulders. We're going to bend them back. And then we're going to pull them all the way down like this on these joints right here. And we're going to thread this bit through like that. And then we will bring the dinosaur head halves together. And when I first got this guy, I could not get them together. I actually had to shave down these pegs just a little bit on the underside to get it to go together. So you might have that problem. And then what you will do is you'll bring these up so that you can get these little triangle bits over this lip. And then this tab right here will peg in right there. It'll go in like that, bring that down, bring that all the way down, and then you will plug this, this section right here will go under these hinges, and then this will plug into some notches right there. So these will plug into there, like that. Squeeze all the way in as high as possible, and then the head will lean back as far as you can get it. And you might want to try and straighten out the head a little bit, otherwise this spike that ends up sticking out might be a little bit off center. And that's how you transform the head section. And next we'll be working on the actual body itself, because we still have a robot to deal with. So we'll be taking this section here and unpegging it here. And by the way, I'm very pleased with this peg right here. It's very small, but holds this very well. I never feel like it's going to come undone when I'm moving the arms here. So kudos to Hasbro on that bit of quality control. So pop this up like this, and you'll just leave it out here for now. Spread the arms out as wide as you can to get them out of the way. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take the legs, we'll straighten out the feet, and there's a little tab right here that goes into a slot right there. Plug it in like that, and make sure these are straight. And then you will plug the legs together right here. And then it's not obvious exactly how much you need to do it. You just fiddle with it till it works. But one thing you want to do is don't have the knees locked. Have the knees bent like this. And then have these kind of just out to the side so they won't bang into anything. And then you will bring the legs up like this. And this peg connection is not the most secure, but bring it up like this. And then what will happen is there are pegs here and here that will peg here and here under the chest bit there. So plug these back together, bring this up, and you'll just kind of finagle it until you get it where it needs to be, because it's kind of hard to see, but once you get it in there, everything will kind of get solid. Now, I have seen video reviews of people who have this figure where they could not get anything to hook it together solid. That seems to be a quality control issue you might have. You can fix that probably with future floors or super glue, so it probably won't be too big of an issue. Next, you want to take the arms. You'll want to bend them around like this so that the elbow is facing that way or the knee facing that way. You want to take the wrist, rotate it around, and this little tab right here will peg into here like this. Then take the heel spur and bring it back like that. And then do the same to the other side. And then the last thing you'll want to deal with are the little arm bits right up here. The instructions will tell you to bring them down like this. And I'll show you why you don't want to do that. But anyway, let me get this back together. And this is the prescribed dinosaur mode. And I do quite like this, but it looks kind of weird because according to these bits down here, his ribcage is really low below his neck and his back and stuff. So either he has a giant rib cage or it's just a little diddly thing down here. And because it means that his rib cage is down here, that he looks kind of lumpy. And it's just not the best look for him. What is better is to leave these way up here. And this will make the dinosaur mode look a lot more streamlined and less lumpy, and make the ribcage make a little bit more sense. So this is my preferred transformation of his ribcage section here. The only problem with it is that it reveals some of the leg detail down here, but that's not a huge detail because you still see it down here. And this is actually a really nice dinosaur mode. I actually quite like this. I love the color scheme. I love the shape of it. And like with the one-step Grimlock figure, this guy over here, I complained how he looked kind of like a Bionicle. And I know some people disagreed with me on that, but basically I mean that he looks very fractured, like none of the parts are actually meant to be a dinosaur. This figure right here, I feel like really doesn't have that problem. I was afraid it would, and he does kind of have a Bionicle aesthetic, but he pulls it together in a way where it's just not gappy at all. It looks like everything here is intended to be exactly this way. So it's a very nice dinosaur mode. For articulation, get the arms, or the legs go forward and back like this, in and out, rotate above the knee, then you get a knee joint here, and if you want it, you can bend this down and rotate it here, but it's supposed to click into here, and I usually just leave it like that. Then you do get these on ball joints. They're not too useful because he is a Tyrannosaurus Rex, but you do have them. And then if you press this button right here, you can close his mouth. It's spring-loaded. And just about the only thing left to talk about is his weapon and what it does in this mode. So his weapon, I'll put it back together. On this side right here, it's a little bit more flat on this side. What that's supposed to do is grab around these tabs on the side of his feet. And it does it like this. And this is supposed to be his weapon storage. And I just untab the legs from the body there. So I'll need to fix that once I get this in. Get that in and then tab this back in here. And this is the weapon storage. And one thing that's nice about this is that it does hold the feet together a little bit better. It's not totally necessary, but it does help. Some people complain about this looking ridiculous, and it is kind of ridiculous. I don't mind the length so much as just this big bulge right here. Because the length, it's a robot-y looking fictionalization of an animal that doesn't exist anymore. The exact proportions looking exactly right is not a big deal to me. So a super long tail, I could deal with it. It's just this big lump here that is a problem. But overall, this has been a video review of Transformers for Age of Extinction Voyager class Grimlock. He is an excellent figure. I highly recommend him in spite of his flaws. And just because of how much gravitas he has. Even in this mode, he has a little bit of it, although not quite as much. Yeah, highly recommended figure. I reviewed Transformers, Power Rangers, Digimon, Tobots, lots of stuff like that. If any of that sounds interesting, please subscribe. I have some links down in the video description down below, a Facebook link, and some playlists. Check those out, and thank you for watching.